Hi, everybody. It's Laura and Brooke here. It's so funny because I always want to say Brooke and Laura because it's alphabetical, but then I sound a little silly because I'm Laura and she's Brooke. It's fine. This is what happens on, day 1000 of me not seeing humans and just talking to a computer screen, basically. I have lost all sense of sanity, I think, at this point. So let's continue to talk to the computer screen. So thank you for joining us today or watching us later. June is our technology month. So now more than ever, attorneys are recognizing the necessity of using technology to practice law. And today we want to take it a little bit of a step further than just the necessity and into efficiency, because efficiency is a big thing for us and it should be a big thing for everyone, because if we can work smarter, not harder, then we're all going to live better lives. So specifically today, we're going to discuss intake and automation. And you know that Brooke and I, push efficiency so that we can live our lives not bogged down by repetitive client tasks. So that's what we're going to kind of focus on today. And by building an intake process that feeds into automating basic client documents, then you can save a tremendous amount of time and cut down on things like transcribing errors so that you can live your life a little bit happier and spend time doing what you want to do instead of just repeating over and over again the same type of tasks for your clients.
Right. So first, we're going to talk about intake, and everybody already does intake. So you do intakes, whether that's having your new client, come sit in with your assistant, paralegal, or even an attorney to just answer questions there, having, doing it on the phone, having a conversation to gather those details, or even collecting that information in an electronic form. This is the only way you can get the information you need to actually perform your job as a lawyer. So we suggest to look at moving entirely to an electronic intake process, actually allowing the client to fill in what is basically a Q&A form. And I know a lot of attorneys kind of balk at that, but honestly, it makes your life so much easier. And if the client is the one answering the questions on their own, any errors in dates and spelling, you can kind of like push that on them instead of, yourself. But, we repeatedly do these tasks and fill names in, and there's a lot of human error in that. So that helps reduce that. We found in doing electronic intakes, that has reduced that drastically for us. People usually know how to spell their own names. So that's one part.
I'm just going to interject here because you'd be surprised. I did an adoption once where I automated the basics of the petition, and the client that I had actually misspelled the child's name that she was trying to adopt. And then that one I tried to play off as, oh, I'm so sorry, I made that mistake. But I went back and double checked because it was automated, and she
spelled the name wrong.
Yeah.
So then you can just feel good about yourself and be like, that client doesn't know how to spell that kid's name. So it does reduce human error and also saves a ton of time. A lot of practice management solutions and standalone services exist for that electronic intake that we are talking about. We would advise that you don't intake sensitive information in some kind of a secure format, like Google Forms, which we know people love Google Forms. A lot of lawyers use Google Forms, but you need to make sure that the security is there with the service that you use, because you are still, even though you are, collecting the information in a different way, you still have to adhere to the ethical, requirements that we have to protect that information.
Exactly. And so we're going to move into the automation piece of why you do electronic questionnaires. It's not just to populate the, fields inside of your practice management system, whatever that might be. It's actually to automate the documents. And we at MyVirtual.Lawyer heavily automate our repetitive documents, like with our estate planning, and also things with basic litigation pleadings, complaints and waivers of service, that type of thing. We believe in automating things instead of having to, retype over and over again. Even with a template, a lot of times you're having to retype things. So keep that in mind. But when you're looking for your technology choices or options on this, make sure that your client intake electronic software, whatever you're using, can be integrated with automation tools. So for example, we use our practice management system specifically for its automation tools. Just like everything else, it has its flaws. If things aren't built specifically for you, then they're going to have a lot of stuff that you don't like. And that's true with pretty much any practice management software, whether it's cloud-based or hardware that's on like your server drive or something like that. It's, but we chose ours specifically for the automation tools because the tools that we have are fully inside of our practice management system that allows us to map our intake answers. So when the client answers those, those questions in the intake questionnaire, it maps with codes that can be embedded into our Word documents for one button automation. It takes a lot of time. It does take time commitment on the front end to create this workflow. You can do it yourself, which Brooke and I have both done. We don't necessarily recommend it all the time, but we outsource for our automation for the, kind of the tedious task of getting that workflow set up. But it really does save you massive amounts of time, your valuable time, when you're actually performing those repetitive tasks for your client. So, again, keep in mind, it's a great thing to look at outsourcing at this point. And if you do choose to have, to outsource, just make sure that you are properly communicating because, that does take some communication on the back end, on the front end as well. But we now have a system set up where if I get a divorce or if we get a will intake or a power of attorney, for example, we can click one button and it populates names, addresses, phone numbers, dates of marriage, all that kind of stuff, dates of separation, how many kids they have, so that it's, cutting down on that back and forth transcribing from the actual intake document.
Yep. That's all very time free. I can't sit still. I'm super jittery. I've had so much caffeine today.
I think Brooke and I've had nothing but coffee, both of us. And
all I've had today.
Yeah.
So I'm just, but anyway, so just to kind of continue on that, if you don't use an all-in-one tool like we do, which again, we highly recommend that, just make sure that your intake software can talk to your automation tool, either by some kind of internal integration, whether that's Zapier or something else that can force that integration because it saves you so much time. Just make sure that you have that. But we wanted to spend a little bit of time with you today, talk about intake and automation. We get a lot of questions from attorneys about what tools that we use, what that workflow looks like. So now's a really good time to be looking into that and to create a more efficient practice. Thank you guys for joining us today. Next week, we are going to be here at 1 p.m. Eastern, 12 Central, 11 Mountain, and 10 Pacific time. We're going to continue the rest of the month of June talking about technology and tech tools because this seems to be one of the more popular things that we talk to folks about. And right now, especially in this time that Laura's talking about where we're just talking to our computer all day long and not real human beings, we're leaning a little bit more in our law practices on technology. So, here are some tips, and we're going to continue to give you tips throughout the month, and we hope you have a great week. Thanks for joining us today. Goodbye.